My name is Ellie. I'm 22 years old. If you only look from the outside, you might think my life flows quietly and simply, like a pastel-colored landscape painting. I'm a senior student majoring in visual arts, have a few small freelance projects, spend my days painting in a sunlit attic, and live in a peaceful countryside with gardens, morning birdsong, and quiet drifting afternoons. But like a painting that holds layered brushstrokes beneath the surface, my life is not as simple as it appears. There are small details, almost invisible, but if you look long enough, you'll start to feel them. A trace of melancholy in the eyes, an emptiness in the storytelling, a question that is yet to be answered. That question is, why do I live with my uncle? At first glance, it might seem like a small detail, but to me, that question is the key that opens the door to the past, where memories pile up like dust on an old painting, just waiting for a light touch to burst into the mind. I used to live with my mother in a small coastal town, where the morning fog wrapped around each street lamp and the sea whispered endlessly. My parents divorced when I was 14. The age people often call the dreamy age, but I called it the age of loss. That divorce wasn't just the end of a relationship, it was the first collapse of the fragile sense of security I once had. After that day, everything changed so fast I could no longer tell where home was. We moved constantly. Each rented apartment felt like a temporary station, and I learned to pack my life into small suitcases. Gradually, I came to understand that nothing in this life is certain. Trust, home, or a sense of belonging, all of it can be washed away like sand under your feet when the waves hit the shore. Then, when I turned 20, my mother received a job offer from a prestigious art organization in Europe. She hesitated for a long time before accepting, I knew that, but in the end, she went. I don't blame her. I understand she sacrificed so much during the years of raising me alone. But that didn't make the feeling of being left behind any less cold. I couldn't follow her to Europe. I still had a year of unfinished school in the US, a vague future waiting ahead. And so Uncle Lucas, my mother's older brother, offered, "Come live with me until you get settled." Uncle Lucas and his wife live in the suburbs, an old-style house but full of warmth, with a backyard of lavender flowers and a kitchen that always smells of cookies on the weekends. It wasn't the place I had imagined myself living, and certainly not the place I wanted to live. But it was the only choice I had at the time. I thought it would just be a temporary solution. But as time passed, I began to sense something unclear in the relationship between me and Uncle Lucas, something never spoken, yet present like a shadow around the dinner table, around the broken conversations, around his eyes whenever I happened to mention my mother. Am I just a niece being taken in? Or is there something else I've never been told? Uncle Lucas's house appeared before my eyes like a peaceful dream, completely detached from the bustling life I once knew. Nestled in a sun-drenched valley, the dark brown wooden house looked like a tiny, on the vast canvas of nature. Green meadows stretched all the way to the horizon, interwoven with ancient trees standing still like witnesses of time. The cobblestone path leading to the house wound through a garden of wildflowers, each step as if drifting through a hazy world. For a child raised among skyscrapers, where neon lights never go out, the stillness here was not peace, it was a strange void. That first night, I lay tossing under a thick blanket, swallowed by absolute silence. No cars, no people, only the whisper of wind brushing through the wooden frame and the murmuring of insects like nature's random words. I felt as if I had entered a foreign land, not because it was unfamiliar, but because it was so alien to my very self. I comforted myself that this was just a stop, a resting place on the journey to find an apartment near school. But the days quietly passed by, with no noise, no pressure, and that temporary state gradually took the shape of something lasting. I learned to hear the sound of time falling, slow, gentle, and persistent. The quiet dinners with Uncle Lucas in the cozy kitchen became a steady habit. The sunny mornings painted long shadows on the wooden floor, and the silent hours in the studio gradually brought me an oddly peaceful feeling. Uncle Lucas, a man older now than in my memories, yet still carrying the same calm and steadiness, like an anchor in the stream of life. He didn't say much, but every gesture, the way he brewed tea, placed an extra blanket on the chair I sat in, or simply the way he looked at me when I was silent, carried a quiet but deep affection. I remember the old afternoons when he took me biking around the park, or when the two of us struggled to fix the old bicycle in the garage. Some people, just by being there, make others feel they are not alone, and he was one of those people. However, not everything in this house was comforting. Aunt Marissa, Uncle's second wife, always kept an invisible yet distinct distance. She wasn't cold, nor was she impolite. On the contrary, she was proper, gently enough, meticulous in every small detail. But it was precisely that just enough that made me feel boxed in, as if I was a piece that didn't quite fit in the family picture she was trying to maintain. Every time her gaze passed over me, I felt scrutinized, judged, like a puzzle she hadn't solved yet. I didn't hate her, because there was no specific reason to, but I couldn't understand her. Her presence, no matter how gentle, still made me feel out of place, like a guest staying too long without knowing when they'd have to leave. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through the window, casting streaks of amber on the old tiled floor. I was curled up in the kitchen corner, diligently finishing my final sketch. The pencil glided lightly across the paper, each line trembling with my breath. Outside the window, an early summer breeze slipped in, causing the thin fabric curtain to flutter like the breath of a vague spirit. Then a very small sound rang out. At first, I thought it was the creak of an old hinge blown by the wind. But then it repeated, this time clearer, heavier, as if someone was stepping. I stopped. My heart skipped a beat. Somehow, in that space I'd grown used to, I suddenly sensed something different. My legs moved on their own, guiding me out of the kitchen, down the long, old hallway, where the peeling walls still reflected sunlight like in distant dreams. Stopping in front of Uncle Lucas's door, I hesitated. The door was ajar, with no sound from within. I was about to knock, but my hand froze in midair. Some instinct, both urging and cautious, made me gently push the door open. And in that very moment, everything seemed to stop. Uncle Lucas was lying on the bed, the sunset casting a soft, gentle light over his face. His eyes were closed, one hand resting lightly on his chest, and his breath was slow and strangely peaceful. The room was silent, with only the faint ticking of the wall clock and me, motionless. I didn't know why I felt so emotional. Maybe it was the way the light embraced his face, both serene and fragile. Or maybe it was because I had never seen anyone living alone exude such loneliness, even in their sleep. A moment so ordinary, yet it made my heart ache. I stepped back, intending to close the door. But my foot caught the edge of the rug and, crash, an old ceramic vase on the shelf fell and shattered. That sound seemed to tear through the suspended stillness. Uncle Lucas opened his eyes. For a split second, I panicked. I braced for approach, a familiar frown. But no, his gaze met mine, not angry, not cold, but a gentle surprise, almost tender. Ellie, what are you doing here? His voice was hoarse, but not stiff like it usually was. I stammered an apology, said I heard a noise and just wanted to make sure he was okay. He was silent for a few seconds. Then he smiled. A tired smile, but strangely warm. It's okay. You know, you can always come to me. I stood still. That sentence seemed like a simple pleasantry. But to me, it felt like a stream of water seeping into a long dry crack in my heart. A soft feeling, unlike anything I'd felt before, welled up. As if, for the first time, someone truly saw me, really saw me. And from that moment I knew everything had changed. Not through some grand event, but through a very gentle, very human tremor, just enough to break the ice within me. And maybe within him too. The days that followed passed, as if someone had slowed down time. No había incident. No words spoken, but something invisible was growing inside me, like a seed sprouting slowly in barren land, quietly yet persistently. every time my hand accidentally touched him. Even for a fleeting moment, my heart would falter. Something like an underground current ran down my spine, not painful but not exactly pleasant either. When I looked up and caught Uncle Lucas watching me from afar, his gaze not clearly affectionate nor guilty, it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. I began to fear those moments. I avoided them, withdrew into my own world. Drawing, once my sanctuary, now couldn't hide the wandering thoughts rising within me. During the day, I buried myself in books and homework. But when night fell, when the house sank into silence, his image returned, painfully vivid, like an endless, wordless melody, repeating with no resolution. I felt guilty, even terrified of myself. But in that inner conflict, there was still a small corner of me that felt warm, a feeling I shouldn't have, yet couldn't deny. I wondered, was I wrong? Or was I simply feeling something too big, beyond what youth could understand? I used to believe in clear boundaries, right is right, wrong is wrong. But now, everything seemed to blur together, like watercolor on wet paper. No clear beginning, no definite end. And then that night came, the night I couldn't draw even a single stroke. My hands trembled, my heart felt empty. I sat silently before a blank sheet, as if I myself had been wiped clean. A soft knock broke the stillness. I turned around. It was Uncle Lucas. He stood there, tall yet seemingly trying to make himself smaller. In the yellow light spilling from the hallway, I saw clearly the tension in his eyes, that emotion he always tried to hide. "Ellie," he said, his voice lowering. "Could you step outside for a moment?" I nodded. We sat facing each other in the living room, neither of us saying a word for the first few minutes. The soft yellow light blanketed everything, making the already heavy atmosphere feel even thicker. As if just one word could make it all explode. He took a deep breath, his hands clasped together on his knees. Then finally he spoke. "We need to talk." He looked at me for a long time, eyes that seemed to have witnessed too much for words to ever convey. At last, he spoke, slowly, like turning the dusty pages of memory. "Something is happening, Ellie, and I can't pretend not to feel it. I'm not even sure if it's right or wrong, but I know it's real." I heard every word as if it echoed from somewhere deep within me. There was something in that voice that made my heart tighten, not from fear, but from recognition. As if a secret I had long tried to deny was now being named by the very lips of the person I respected most. I don't know how long I stayed silent. It felt like time had paused, no longer flowing, but becoming a still lake, where every ripple was magnified. Then suddenly, like a surging wave, I couldn't hold back anymore. The emotions, the thoughts, the restless dreams, and the long sleepless nights all burst out into words, trembling but honest. "I feel it too, but I don't know what to do with it." We didn't hug. There were no tears, no comforting words or promises. Just two people, one old, one young, sitting beside each other in silence. In that space, there was something very fragile, like a thread stretched between two worlds, past and future, faith and doubt, principle and emotion. And I understood, in that moment, that something had changed forever. Like stepping through a door and hearing it close behind you, final, decisive, irreversible. I felt it clearly as my own name, that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. This relationship, if it could even be called that, was a vast gray area between right and wrong. No one had ever taught me how to walk through such a maze without losing myself. But still, I couldn't go back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I had seen clearly something I could no longer pretend didn't exist. Between us was a distance, not measured in units, but in unspoken things, in fear of judgment, in the quiet tensions never named. But above all, there was the truth. And the truth, once touched, has no way back. Ellie, don't know where I'll go from here. But I know, from that moment on, I stepped into a turning point. A place where every ego, every mask is stripped away. A place where only I remain, facing myself,